Goldenrod is an autumn flowering plant of heathy and gravelly places. Old sandpits, dry turf spread grounds such as we have here would be quite typical places. And by the time it sneaks onto the floral stage in August and September, ragwort has been in flower for about 3 months. And if at this stage you've taken your eye off the ball, it's quite easy at first glance to mistake goldenrod for a small plant of ragwort. But if you have the two side by side, as we have here, you can see they're actually quite different plants. If you look at ragwort for a start, you can see that all the branches in the inflorescence are trying to reach up to the same level to present a sort of a plate-like appearance to the inflorescence. Whereas in goldenrod, you can see small panicles of flowers are arranged more or less evenly up the top half of the stem. The leaves are completely different. Small, lance-shaped leaves, almost insignificant on goldenrod, whereas in ragwort, they're deeply divided, very characteristic looking leaves. And you can see that the inflorescence in goldenrod, the oldest flowers are at the top and the youngest ones at the bottom, which is not a common arrangement. And then if we look at the individual florets, the individual florets in goldenrod are much smaller than they are in ragwort. The disc in the centre is only about 5 millimeters across and contains anything from 10 to 30 small florets. But the overall conspicuousness of the individual flower heads is greatly increased by the half dozen or so ray florets. It's increased in fact about threefold by the half dozen or so ray florets around the edge. Goldenrod doesn't attract insect visitors in anything like the numbers or variety of ragwort, but structurally this is a butterfly flower. The late flowering of goldenrod makes it more important than it might otherwise be also as a source of nectar and pollen for bees and some wasps. Notice how much taller and more slender the capitulum or flower head is than it is in ragwort. The corolla tubes are like a bundle of slender pipettes adapted to insects with longer tongues. The cylinder of anthers, and in time the 5 slender pillar-like filaments that support it, extends way out beyond the mouth of the corolla, and the bifid stigma in due course pushes through the cylinder and reaches still further above the flower. The stigma only becomes receptive at this stage, and its receptive surfaces are on the outside of the fork, which doesn't curl backwards as it so often does in daisy-type florets. The long hairs of the pappus, the elaborately modified calyx that will become the parachute of the little fruit, are unusually prominent in the flowers. In John Gerard's 16th century day, goldenrod was supposed to excel above all other herbs in the stopping of blood. But in fact, it enjoyed an exceptionally wide range of other uses, many of them attested by the modern European Medicines Agency's evaluation of the properties of the plant. But when you come to think of it, down the long millennia before the invention of modern bandages, many herbs were tried for their efficacy in this regard, and their use would not have continued unless they had proved to be efficacious, at least to some degree. And of course, remember, the all-important placebo injection of confidence in the remedy, which is so important to many other conditions, is not so likely to apply to stopping the flow of blood. Then, after this centuries-long informal drugs trial, goldenrod emerges among the foremost of the vulnerary herbs, which is the term applied to these plants, such as self-heal. Woundwort would be among them as well. But in the case of goldenrod, the claim is copper fastened by the name itself. Not the English name, but the scientific name. The scientific Latin name for goldenrod is Solidago virgaurea. The virgaurea bit in Latin simply means goldenrod, virga aurea, goldenrod. But the generic name, Solidago, is a contraction of the Latin in solidum ago vulnera, I cause wounds to heal. But all of that apart, the flowers can be added to salads and eaten, and a tea can be made from the flowers and the leaves, fresh or dried, which comes highly recommended for the lubrication of joints in the elderly.